There are days when the heart feels heavy as lead, and the sensation is that the ground has disappeared beneath our feet. Problems arise unexpectedly, plans crumble, and everything seems to slip out of our control. It is in these moments, when the soul cries out for direction, that an ancient promise echoes with renewed power. "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you," says the Lord. These words were not spoken in easy times. They were proclaimed amid exile, pain, and hopelessness. The people of Israel had lost everything: land, temple, freedom. And yet, God told them there was still a plan for peace and not for evil, to give them a future and a hope. Today, when you look around and see nothing but confusion, that same promise remains alive. God has not lost control. He never loses it. Even when everything seems out of place, He continues to direct your story with firm hands and loving eyes. It's natural to think that if something went wrong, then the plan has failed. But God's logic is not based on the appearance of circumstances. It is grounded in eternity. The paths He leads us down often seem winding, confusing, even unjust. However, Jeremiah 29 verse 11 is not a promise of the absence of suffering, but a guarantee of purpose amid pain. The people of Israel, exiled in Babylon, certainly felt forgotten. Yet it was right there in the foreign land that God was preparing their hearts, molding their identity, and renewing their hope. Similarly, the difficulties we face today may seem like detours, but they are often essential parts of the journey. God doesn't improvise. Every tear, every weight, every silence plays a role in the greater plan. He sees the big picture, and even what seems like loss today could be the key piece of a greater good still to come. It is common, in moments of pain, to feel like we've been left behind, as if God is too busy to notice our suffering. But this couldn't be further from the truth. Jeremiah 29 verse 11 is a declaration of God's heart. "I know the plans I have for you." It's not chance that governs our story, nor are we invisible to Him. Even when the silence feels deafening, He is present, watching every step, embracing every sigh. The Israelites likely also thought they had been abandoned in Babylon, but God was attentive, caring for every detail. Similarly, He is with you now, even if you can't feel it. The lack of immediate answers is not a sign of forgetfulness, but rather a deep care that works in the right time. Your name is engraved on the hands of the Creator, and that is proof enough that you have never been ignored. When everything seems to be falling apart, our first reaction is often to escape, to flee from pain, discomfort, and uncertainty. But the process that God allows in our lives is never in vain. In Jeremiah 29, the people of Israel were captive in Babylon, a strange and hostile place, far from everything they knew. Yet even there, God was shaping His people, teaching, refining, purifying. Likewise, the difficult phases we face today carry hidden value. You may not see it now, but the desert you're walking through is preparing the ground to bloom. God uses moments of pain as building tools. He does not waste suffering. Every tear is utilized, every sleepless night is recorded, every silent prayer is heard. The process may seem confusing, but the purpose is always redemptive. It's easy to get lost in the chaos of the present. When everything seems contrary, when plans crumble and anxiety tries to take over, we are tempted to think that God has forgotten us. But Jeremiah 29 verse 11 reminds us of something essential. Our hope is not in what we see, but in the promise of the one who never fails. God hasn't called us to trust in the scenario, but in His Word. Circumstances change, people fail, but the Lord remains the same. He doesn't lie, doesn't change His mind, and isn't confused by time. Even if nothing is as you imagined, there is a future of peace being carefully prepared by Him. While everything around you seems uncertain, keep your eyes on the one who guarantees, "I know the plans I have for you." That changes everything. There are moments when the silence of God screams louder than any pain. You pray, seek, wait, and nothing changes. It feels like everything is stagnant, frozen in time. But God's silence is not absence, it's strategy. It's in the apparent void that He molds, moves pieces, aligns hearts, and prepares answers. Jeremiah 29 verse 11 reminds us that He has plans, and that implies processes, many of which are invisible to our eyes. Remember Joseph in Egypt? Before he reached the palace, he went through the depths of a pit. And in every phase, God was there. So if you're experiencing a time of silence, don't be discouraged. God hasn't stopped acting. He is simply working in the invisible, preparing the ground for what is to come. Trust. His timing is perfect. At first glance, difficulties seem like interruptions to the plan. A lost job, a closed door, an unexpected disappointment, all of this can seem unfair and senseless. But when we look with eyes of faith, we see that God, in His sovereignty, transforms every stumble into a springboard. Jeremiah 29 verse 11 clearly states that He has plans for peace, not for evil, to give us a future and a hope. This includes even the painful moments. God does not waste pain. He uses every wound to teach us, strengthen us, and prepare us. Like gold refined in fire, each adversity can purify us and draw us closer to Him. So if you're facing a storm, remember, it may be precisely what is leading you to the center of God's purpose. We live in a fast-paced world where everything needs to be immediate. But God works at a different rhythm, His perfect timing, not ours. Jeremiah 29 verse 11 does not promise haste, it promises hope. And this hope often arises in the waiting. When God makes us wait, it's not punishment, it's preparation. Waiting shapes character, develops faith, and reveals how much we trust Him, even when we don't see immediate results. Think of Joseph in Egypt, David before the throne, or Abraham waiting for a son. All of them waited. And in that waiting, God worked. If you find yourself in a time of silence, know this: heaven is not on pause, it's under construction. The promise is not dead, it's maturing. Often, amid pain, it's hard to see God's hand. But it's precisely in those moments that His faithfulness manifests in the most intimate ways. Jeremiah 29 verse 11 speaks of plans for peace and not for evil, and that includes times when everything seems to fall apart. God's faithfulness does not depend on circumstances. It is constant. He remains the same when we smile or when we cry. Suffering may cloud our vision, but it never alters the promise. In difficult times, God becomes closer, more present. Sometimes, it is in the valley that we feel the warmth of His embrace the strongest. It is there that He shows us that we are not forgotten, that there is purpose even in what hurts. When the winds of life blow fiercely and everything seems adrift, it is hope in God that anchors the soul. Jeremiah 29 verse 11 does not promise the absence of struggles, but it assures a future of peace. This hope is not empty. It is based on the faithfulness of a God who never lies. In tough times, maintaining this hope is like firmly holding onto a rope in the midst of a storm. It doesn't stop the rain from falling, but it keeps us from being swept away by it. It is this hope that renews our strength when everything invites us to give up, that reignites our faith when everything seems dark. Believing in God's plans means trusting that the sun will shine again, even if today the sky is cloudy. Even if everything around us crumbles, one truth remains firm: God's plans never fail. Jeremiah 29 verse 11 reminds us that the Lord has thoughts of peace and not of evil. This means that even when our paths seem confusing or painful, He is conducting the story with perfection. There are times when God's silence feels like abandonment, but it is merely the time when He works behind the scenes. His will may surprise us, but it never disappoints us. Everything He promises, He fulfills, even if it's in His time, not ours. And when we finally understand this, we learn to rest, even without understanding. For those who trust in the Lord know, nothing, absolutely nothing, can thwart what He has determined. Not all pain is punishment. Often, it is preparation. What hurts today may be aligning you with a greater purpose that you cannot yet see. God doesn't waste suffering. He transforms tears into lessons, losses into new beginnings, and weakness into strength. Jeremiah 29 verse 11 reveals to us that there is a plan of peace behind it all. And peace is not the absence of struggle, but the presence of God in the midst of it. Instead of asking, "Why me?" perhaps the wiser question is to ask, "For what purpose?" Because something great is being birthed in silence, and every wound, when placed in the right hands, can blossom into purpose. When the days feel heavy and tomorrow seems like a thick fog, it is faith that sustains us. Not a blind faith, but one that knows the character of God and remembers Jeremiah 29 verse 11, that He has plans for peace and not for harm. Faith does not deny pain. It faces it knowing that it will not be the final chapter. It is standing firm even when the ground feels shaky. It is looking up to the sky, even when it rains, with the conviction that the sun will shine again. Because the author of our story does not abandon the plot midway. He specializes in turning stained pages into vibrant testimonies of overcoming. Waiting is never easy. Time seems to slow down when we are expecting an answer or a solution. But what if waiting is, in fact, a divine instrument of preparation? Jeremiah 29 verse 11 reminds us that God has plans, and plans require time, structure, and maturity to be fulfilled. Sometimes, God isn't saying no, He's simply saying not yet. During this interval, He is shaping our hearts, teaching us patience, resilience, and trust. Because when His time comes, everything falls into place with a perfection that no rush could achieve. Waiting may hurt, but it is during this time that the roots of faith begin to grow. At the end of every struggle, doubt, or silence, the truth of Jeremiah 29 verse 11 remains. God has thoughts of peace and not of harm, to give us a future and a hope. This promise is not just a comfort, it is an anchor for stormy days. Even when the paths seem uncertain and the circumstances try to shout otherwise, the Lord remains sovereign, writing a story that will only make complete sense later on. He doesn't waste pain or delay. Everything we go through is woven with purpose. So, rest. Not in your own strength, but in the faithfulness of a God who is already in your tomorrow. He is an expert at turning difficult times into powerful testimonies.